What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, and this is my brutally honest review for another Crab's Treasure. Now, let me just say right up front, this is by far the hardest game I have played in the last couple years. It's got incredibly punishing combat, it's got tough dodge rolls, it's got multi-phase boss fights, but it's also got some of the most fun encounters I've seen in a very long time. While it may appear to be very cutesy with this colorful SpongeBob aesthetic, another Crab's Treasure is the kind of thing that is going to slit your throat constantly. But if you have the patience, if you've got the reaction time, I feel like this is a game that is definitely worth playing. But I want to break this video down into 3 separate chunks. Let's talk about the story and setting, the incredibly addictive combat, and then finally, the very unique easy mode that they've invented that I feel like, well, I have some thoughts on that. Let's get into it. Hi, so this is Kril. He's our cutesy hero, and one day he's just chilling out, living on the beach, having his best life, when suddenly a shark shows up and reclaims his house. It gets repossessed because apparently he hasn't been paying his ocean taxes. And this begins our epic quest for revenge and basically just to get our house back. Now, the first thing that really struck me when I began to play another Crab's Treasure is just how dangerous the ocean is. As we explore the 7 seas and try and actually go from the sands between to these twisted veils, what's cool is that everything is trying to kill you for a specific purpose. There is this stuff called the gunk. It's like a toxic chemical that drives everybody crazy, from sea cops all the way up to random crustaceans. Everybody you encounter, even just random fishies, are going to try and attack you, which means that as you explore, pretty much treat everybody as a dangerous foe because they will kick your ass. Now, this does work exactly like Dark Souls. You kill enemies and you level up, but instead of collecting souls, you collect microplastics. Instead of going to bonfires, you go to these things called moon shells. But what's great about this is that I do like that it has that exact tight pacing of a good Dark Souls game. Sometimes you get lost, sometimes you have to backtrack, sometimes you have no idea what you're doing, but to me, that's also kind of the glory of it. Kril has an objective in mind. He wants to get his shell back, but this game is surprisingly big. It took me 22 hours to finish pretty much every boss in the game and find a lot of those collectibles, but during it, there are times where the game really opens up. It gives you a big environment with multiple destinations, and you kind of get a chance to just sit there and stare at it and say, okay, what is going to murder me next? Now, when you're playing this, there is a lot of different styles. With Kril, you only have this single fork. You never get any other weapons, but you can do a fast attack and a strong attack. On the surface, it appears simple, but what completely changes the balancing of the game are these little guys called Stowaways. So think of these as like stat-boosting barnacles that kind of work like gear. So while you're fighting, you will find these special Stowaways, and you can equip 3 of them at a time. Of course, there's standard ones that will do stuff like just straight boost your attack or your defense, but there's ones that will also increase your umami. Now, this is by far the weirdest mechanic in the game, which is essentially ocean magic. Umami is 2 separate things at once. It's attached to your shells, so each of the shells you find during the course of your exploration, you are a hermit crab, which means you can put on stuff like, I don't know, a random empty can or spare shells you find across the ocean, or even random stuff like a shotgun shell. And by putting these on, you have a special umami ability. You essentially channel it. So if you put on something like a shot glass, the special ability of that can be deploying spikes to defend yourself. Some stuff is electrified or can let you do deadly fizzy attacks. Every single shell you find has a different magical ability attached to it that's cool. It has this finite recharge. You basically regrow magic by killing foes, and these super abilities are very, very different. It's cool that the shell system makes it so that when you find a shell you like, you want to actually keep it as long as possible, but you can't upgrade it. The game definitely intends for you to keep discarding these shells, to keep trying different ones because the different umami abilities fit different situations, but also your shells can break. When you block, there is a defend button in this game. I primarily dodged a lot. I usually play like heavy dodge roll builds in a lot of my Dark Souls games. But if you want, you can straight try to soak attacks, which can help for some of the bigger enemies hitting with bigger attacks, but your shell will shatter. I really enjoy the system of trying to scrounge different styles of armor on the fly and sometimes having to learn them very instantaneously. Like, especially in boss fight rooms, they'll put a bunch of empty shells around and you have to try and pick them up. Now, by far, the best part of the game is these mega boss fights. I don't want to show too many of the really, really important ones because I want you to be surprised, but I encountered an electric eel that used garbage as weapons, including a vibrator she clearly found. There's a freaking huge lobster guy that uses chopsticks like samurai swords. I mean, literally every boss fight I encountered, even the random mini bosses like a crab using a bike lock as like a sledgehammer guillotine combo, every enemy is not just creative, they're fun. Like, even when they're completely stomping my face, a lot of times I could sit back and appreciate the brutality of this balancing. But that does bring me to the other kind of magic and my major complaint about the game itself. So you do get that umami that's attached to your freaking shells, but you also get random magical abilities. As you defeat bosses, you get different skills that let you do, well, sort of like a watered down version of a super attack. Think of it kind of like Mega Man, where by defeating Cutman, you get a version of the cut. So you defeat an electric eel, and now you can shoot electricity. My thing is that a lot of this game just feels too tough. Like, straight up. As much as I enjoyed it, as much as I did manage to finish it, there was a lot of encounters in this where I did feel like I was kind of bashing my head against it. I think that everything in here just hits a little bit too hard. Now, I did have a chance to talk to the developers because honestly, they're very open to feedback. So maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe I'm just being a big baby because I got my ass kicked. But it did feel like, as a person that did manage to completely finish the game, I did feel overly forced to grind a bit. Every time you kill random fish or enemies and stuff like that, you get those microplastics that you can put into your stats, increasing your health, your damage, your defense, your magic, and that's, of course, the standard Dark Souls system. My issue is that it felt more mandatory. I know in a lot of Dark Souls games, people like to do Soul Level 1, where you beat the game at the lowest level possible. I feel like for something like Another Crab's Treasure, it is so scaled to you being high level that it doesn't really allow you to mess around with that interesting, purposeful difficulty. There's already just so much toughness, it's hard to make it even harder on yourself. Now, I do want to talk a bit about the upgrade system beyond just leveling up. So, the gear in this game is those freaking stowaways. They're the little tiny things that you attach to your shell to boost your combat, but there is two other styles of upgrade you can do. There is this like talent tree. It's very bizarre. This basically unlocks additional abilities. I'm going to sound like a total heathen. I never used a single one of these ever. Like, maybe the charge attack where you can run at a foe and poke their eye out, but a lot of the stuff just feels more tailored towards, like, I don't know. I went such a raw strength build. I played it like Guts from Berserk. These are definitely for people that are trying to out-finesse, out-maneuver, out-counter a lot of these enemies. The ability to grapple hook people in or try and do special extra strikes and combos, I think this talent tree is cool, but I honestly didn't use it much. The main thing I did is, while exploring these different dungeons, like messed up train graveyards or whatever the heck, that's when I would find these things that are called stainless steel relic. They let you upgrade your fork permanently to do a lot more damage. And since I went raw strength, I really just stacked attack power as much as possible so that I could kill these heavy hitting foes before they practically one-shot me. The final thing I want to talk about is the interesting easy mode options that they've put into this, because as a person who's played a lot of Dark Souls style games, I don't think I've ever seen something with a straight up easy mode, but this one has some interesting choices to it. So you can turn up the amount of health that enemies have, making it so they're perpetually weaker. You can also increase your defense so that enemies straight up do not hit you as hard. And there's even an ability to just make it so you have a gun. Just a straight up, it's a gun. It lets you one-shot anybody in the game. Now, I tested this stuff after I beat the last boss, and yep, it seems to work on anything. It will literally one-shot anything in the entire ocean, including bosses. I use this on some mini bosses. I know that some gamers get incredibly upset by the concepts of easy modes, but I actually think that this is a very smart idea. Another Crab's Treasure developers clearly made something special. They made something cute. They made something very wacky, and they want you to see it. And not everybody is going to be able to parry and dodge roll and survive this incredible oceanic onslaught. To me personally, I like the fact that there is an option. Even if I don't use it, even if you don't use it, I will admit that a couple times here and there, what I would do is turn down enemy health when I was trying to grind and level up. Like, I already had the power to kill stuff, but if I'm just sitting there having to kill 5,000 dudes to try and power level a bit, I'm going to reduce that amount of time. That they weren't really killing me anyways, I'm just basically saving myself some extra effort. I think these options are great because they are options. I like the fact that I can turn them on and turn them off whenever I want, but just in general, I feel like Another Crab's Treasure is an incredibly fun game. It's probably too tough for 99% of people, but if you're getting this on Game Pass or you're interested to check it out, I do think it is a very good time. And don't be afraid to try out those options if you feel yourself just getting utterly demolished. But let's go over to the ratings board because we have heard some good and some bad. So let's go and put a big number on it. I'm giving Another Crab's Treasure a 9 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. But please do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Hell yeah. SpongeBob! I don't know what I'm talking about. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.